in crowded spaces, never really used public transport before. So what we did on that was we used the flexibility of our policies to avoid travelling during the rush hour when it was really busy. So just shifted the working day a little bit, and then gradually eased him into using public transport. Big challenge for Arthur, but he overcame that, the objective to get to work, and we made sure that on the certainly on the first few days that we met him at the door, because we happened to work in a fairly large and potentially quite intimidating office if you don't know it. And I'm pleased to say that when I visit the office now, although I haven't for a while since lockdown, it's Arthur that comes to the door and meets me, because I get a bit lost in the building as well. So where is he now? He's making fantastic progress with us on his apprenticeship. He's a really valued team member, and he enjoys being part of a team as well. So he really enjoys that social interaction, and we really value him. I've seen him grow immensely as an individual, from somebody that would really struggle to make a phone conversation to somebody that can talk in lots of different media, and actually stands up and does the stand-up ceremony event and that type of thing. Now that's been a real challenge for him, and we've eased him into that gently. And I think some of that is some of the obstacles have really been to do with that social isolation when you're not used to talking to people, but can certainly see a future now. I think, like a lot of people, Arthur's got his own particular challenges of working from home. So what we're doing there is we're making sure that we're carrying on that social interaction. Working in a digital way certainly helps, because we have the daily stand-ups, and the teams are in regular contact with one another. And we've arranged some actual face-to-face meetings as well in a safe environment in Leeds, which has helped. But it is a challenge, and I think people on this watching this will recognise their own challenges that they've faced by being at home. So I just wanted to share some key learning with you before I left, but I think the key learning for me was to focus on the outcome, not the process. And you remember the story about the interview? There are lots of different ways to get through things. Just keep your eyes on the prize and go for the outcome. Supportive environment can't be underestimated, and this is not just about the support itself, but it's about the encouragement and the encouragement to grow and move a little at a time out of the comfort zone to a point. Also need to be prepared to explain a lot of the unwritten rules, and be prepared to be challenged back on some of those roles, which I've since realised by talking to Arthur, some of the unwritten rules are a little bit pointless in themselves, but you need to take time to be able to explain those and some of the perhaps the social niceties of things. I've been stuck several times where I haven't really known whether I was doing the right thing or I was getting things right, and the key thing there is to ask for help. There's so many people out there that want to help you. I've found loads of brilliant people in my organisation and through the Ability Network that are always on hand to help, as well as the partners and experts out in the system. You're never short of help, but you need to ask. I'm just going to leave you with one thought before I go, really, and that's here. It's how many more people like Arthur are living off the grid? Because there's some really talented people out there, but they're just not going to find you. So you need to go out and find them. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Digital Festival.
Hello, I'm Eddie Stokes, and first I'd like to say thank you to the Colders Guild for inviting me to speak at this celebrating neurodiversity in tech event. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I want to speak about how diversity and accessibility make for better software in the way we produce it, and the way we make it, and the way that people can consume it. So I've been in software testing and previously before that auditing for nearly 20 years. I've been learning accessibility since 2015 to make sure that as many people can use software as possible. I've been rather fortunate that I've done some really interesting events with the Ministry of Testing. I do a course on there for accessibility, and I've spoken at a few events. I always like to say I'm an advocate rather than an expert because it's a very wide range of accessibility and there's so much to learn. So over to what we're about today, which is neurodiversity. So when we're making software, it's really important that we have a diverse group of people making it. If you get a lot of people who are very much the same, you tend to get software that works very well for that particular group of people, but not necessarily anybody else. So if a development team doesn't think about accessibility, they may not think about how people who are only using a keyboard might access it, about how people who are using assistive technology might be using it, like screen readers and things like that. So I made a visual heuristic, which is called the Accessibility Quadrants. And as well as thinking about accessibility from a compliance point of view, which is where a lot of people's main focus is, I'm trying to encourage people to look at it from multiple angles, which in essence is what testing is. It's trying to look at things from different perspectives, from different risks, and from different people's points of view. Now, as one person, I can only do so much. I can try my very best to check that everything works with a screen reader, but as not a full-time screen reader user, I'm not going to have exactly the same experience as someone who is. So it's important that I can take it so far, but we check that people who use screen readers full-time can use it. So you can see in my quadrants, I talk about making sure we use inclusive language, making sure the readability is important because not everybody has university education, so we need to make sure that our software and the way we describe our software is available to everybody. So having that accessibility and that diverse teams is really important, and that not only covers race and gender and backgrounds, but neurodiversity as well, because the wider range of different people we can help create and test software, the more that software is going to be available to as many people as possible. Now, it was my honour to train Scott Kenyon a few years ago when he first came into testing, and I believe he's following me in this talk. Scott has autism, among some other brilliant qualities, and he already looks at software in a different way than I do. So he already has an advantage over me because he's already looking at things from a different point of view. And hopefully Scott will tell you a little bit about that in his section. Thank you very much, and over to the next speaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Kenyon. I'm here to give a quick ice break kind of talk about myself, what I do, what I have, some of the challenges, and some quick wins and things hopefully you can take away from this. So my name is Scott Kenyon. I'm a senior software test analyst. I've been working for the company ComputerShare for over 10 years. I've done a lot of different roles within the company. And I am a neurodiverse person with I got PTSD, autism spectrum disorder, and anxiety disorder, and more. I'm very vocal, and I talk about it a lot to people. I think it's important that people with neurodiversity can talk about it and bring more people aware to understand what value we bring. I have previously given talks at tester conferences about mental health and neurodiversity, as well as in my own workplace. I found it difficult at the time when I first got diagnosed about 4 or 5 years ago, with understanding where I could fit in, where I could add value. Felt quite isolated, almost like a burden. But I was quite lucky. I moved over to become a test analyst, and Adi, who you've just heard, was my mentor. From his accessibility point of view and where he came from, we first started our learning journey. And there were a lot of challenges and quite a lot of changes. A lot had to evolve. We started with the usual learning sort of journey. Here's a book, read it, let's talk about it. We found quite quickly that actually it just didn't work for myself, for other people who are neurodiverse. We had to get a lot more understanding. We got a lot closer to Adi to understand actually what worked for me and make it unique for me. A lot of open, a lot of honest conversations we had. I ended up creating a one-page A4 document that I actually provided to the people I worked with or anybody within my sphere of influence to say, this is what I've got. These are some links to the autism website to talk about the best way to communicate, and that helped a lot. Being open and honest up front and get people to understand where I'm coming from. We work in an agile environment where I am, and it's all about failing fast and recovering fast. But that didn't really sink in with me at the start. I didn't understand it enough until it was explained differently by Adi, just by changing the way and evolving the way we communicated. Some of the things that I found really important is just the communication aspect of it. A person with neurodiversity in a workplace may feel burdened, may feel like a burden to that workplace, may feel like they can't actually speak up and talk about it. But actually, it may be comfortable to talk about it, it may not be, but at least approach with the open mind aspect. Simple to you is not simple to me, but simple to me is not simple to you. It's a good way of describing it. I can pick up very complex situations quickly and recite them, and I'm a picture drawer person to explain things, or verbally. I like to do things face to face. So when I do communicate, webcams on. And also by providing the A4 sort of cheat sheet on what I've got and where to get help and support, as it were, from the other colleagues, it removed a lot of assumptions and barriers. A lot of them were gone. And I also allow people to ask me anything. I do that quite a lot, bit of an AMA, and a lot of people do, and they're quite surprised. And I think a lot of people are now starting to understand the complexity of neurodiverse people and the value they bring. We deal with customer-facing products, and our customer-facing products need a different eye, a different critical view. And someone like myself, or other people with neurodiverse skills, exactly what they are. They come with skills and unbiased opinions, and if you're in those sort of pressure cooker meetings that there's a lot of bias in there and it's all going one way, well, I can hold up my hand and say, actually, I don't think this smells right, is right. Let's think about it more, explain it more, give me some more information, draw me a picture. If it's that simple, draw me a picture, explain it this way. And I think that's a way of getting a better understanding, is sometimes just be aware that if someone is asking that question, to actually support them. It's a really, really quick way of supporting neurodiverse people, is saying, is this what we think it is? Do we understand this as a group, and to move forward? And that kind of comes onto my quick wins and takeaways. Talk a lot more, use webcams. I find actually face-to-face, seeing people's expressions, seeing how they react to me, and my expressions are quite, I wave my hands a lot. It sometimes works, and I call it effective communication as well. Everyone talks about communication. Effective. Do I need to know this information or not? I will take every bit of information you give me as priority number one. Everything will be top priority, because that's one of my traits. Everything's top priority. If it isn't, and I don't need to know it, don't tell me, or tell me this is not priority. Be very open, very honest, very direct on what it is you're providing to me and why. Okay. Also, fail fast, learn fast. If something isn't working for me, stop doing it and learn and do something else. You know, I tried to write documentation a certain way, the way that, you know, that the business did it, and I just couldn't do it. It doesn't work with me. So I actually went back and had a discussion with my management team and said, no, this doesn't work. I prefer to do this way, and it's different. And they supported me because I approached them and said, okay, this isn't working. And we actually learned a lot more and actually produced better documentation now because we've just, you know, challenged the norm, just from a different way of looking at it. And it felt like a white barrier for me. You know, always good to think of what seems very little to you could be something big to someone else. And don't be scared to talk about it. You know, don't challenge, but talk. You know, if we're open and honest in our communication and we're very, I'd say, direct on it as well, then that's the best way to be. You know, we don't have to feel embarrassed. We don't have to feel like, actually, if I say this, I could fail or it could be bad. If it comes from the heart and it's honest and it's what we need and what we should all be thinking about moving forward, you know, in interviews, communicating with different people with neurodiversity issues. Okay, the direct and honest approach is the best approach, in my opinion. I'm an advocate for that, you know, and that's what we're going for. I mean, this is quite a quick lightning talk to kind of give you a bit of a scattergun. I'm very quick on speaking. So apologies if I went too fast for people. You can find me on Twitter at testing_Scott. That's a picture of my brain. And, you know, I've got lots of case studies and ways I came across challenges and made them better. A lot of them are around understanding about internal reflection and then external looking at what you could do better. I'm happy to share them. Ask me all the questions you want. And thank you very much for your time.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Elwood. I am the Community Security Operations Centre Manager on behalf of the IASME Consortium. Today I'm going to talk to you about the training provided by the UK Cybersecurity Forum, which is an organisation run by the IASME Consortium. So the training is for neurodiverse people, and through this there's been various employment opportunities which have come about, including my own. And so this is a story about me. It's all about me, really. So it's a well-established fact that only 16% of autistic people are actually engaged in full-time work. This is a tragedy. Many of these people are highly talented, highly skilled, and have a place in our society, and they can contribute to important things. So why cybersecurity? There's an increase in demand for people to provide cybersecurity skills, and there's a growing cyber skills shortage. There's a gap in the market there. So neurodiverse people are very often very good at spotting patterns. They have good focus. They can resolve tasks out until they are complete. Excellent attention to detail, very determined people, and so they are highly suitable for cybersecurity. So the government has tapped into this resource for a long time. It's a well-established fact. GCHQ do actively recruit neurodivergent people like myself. The GCHQ former director, Robert Hannigan, here's a quote from him: "We need all talents and we need people who dare to think differently and be different." And this is a fantastic example of that in action, really. Alan Turing, unfortunately persecuted during his time, saved thousands of people. So my story and my journey through this training program. So I was diagnosed with Asperger's at the ripe age of 48. and I had a occupational therapist and a vocational specialist who were working with me. They became aware of the training program with the UK Cybersecurity Forum. They thought, well, this could suit Jonathan, and they put me in touch. I had previously been reasonably successful in aerospace engineering. I'd spent 30 years in that industry, but I found myself unemployed all of a sudden. I needed a supportive environment, and I needed an opportunity to perhaps change my career a little bit, and a chance to finish off my university studies in business leadership. So I joined the training program, and the training took place here at the Guildhall in Worcester, and we had weekly support from the local ROCU, the Regional Organisational Crime Unit for West Midlands. So Wendy would turn up and teach us all about right from wrong, what you can and cannot do in cybersecurity, because there are some very fine lines as to what you can and cannot do. So the training comprised of immersive labs training, which we could do that in our own time, in our own environments, and also at the training centre in Worcester. And every week we had a masterclass from an industry expert. So here's some logos of those people who turned up and gave up their time free of charge to teach us about the inside track on cybersecurity. So you must bear in mind that many people had not had any workplace experience whatsoever. So these volunteers are critical to teach us how to behave and act and get jobs in cybersecurity. So the trainees themselves, we were aged between 19 and 50. I was the 50-year-old. Anyway, lots of referrals were received from the NHS, Department for Work and Pensions, local charities, the police, and lots of different experiences within the cohort, but all neurodiverse and all unemployed. So it has been a success. So 44 people have been trained so far through the program. 26 of them have found employment, which is 60%. 19 are working in cybersecurity, and we're still in contact with all of those people. And many of my team are within that. So here we have some real people who have gone through the training and secured jobs. Myself, obviously. There's Jess, who is a highly talented pen tester. She can have a look at your perimeter fences and see how the bad guys might get in. Stephen is now a top security architect. David, who's part of my team, is a top researcher. So these are just some of the people who have benefited from the scheme. So we are missing further jobs for people. We need funding and other regional provision. So many of the people who come into the training do have some low self-esteem, high anxiety. They've had some bad experiences in the past, and part of the difficulty is to get engaged with those people and to get beyond those bad experiences and give them some good experiences, some hope and things to aim for and target. So following the training for me, IASME invested £360,000 over a period of 2 years and started its own security operations centre, which I am now the manager of. Through that, that employed 14 neurodiverse people. We have full-time welfare support, as did the training program. This is really important. So neurodiverse people benefit from having a mentor, somebody they can confide in, somebody they can test and get valued feedback from. This builds confidence. This overcomes problems and difficulties. So a mentor, an expert, within the organisation or from outside of the organisations. Later, or we will be talking to Jen, who is one of those experts, and you can take on people like that who can get these talented people into your organisations, support them, and you can reap the benefit of having these different thinking people within your organisation. So we've developed a range of services for SMEs and for vulnerable individuals. So this is taking unemployed people, giving them jobs, protecting people into society who are vulnerable. Job done. We've also had employment partnerships. So E2E Assure has started a program called E2E Engage. They have been very successful. They were struggling to recruit security analysts. They've employed 7 people through this program so far, and all of those guys are happily in jobs. We continue to support them. So part of our efforts are not only to provide the training, but also to give them continued support. It's been a big success. Go to their website. They've got some information about their program there, recruitment opportunities there as well. So that's all good. We experienced the COVID effect. So at that point, we did have to furlough some of my SOC guys, but they're back and they're working from home. So don't let working from home scenarios be a problem to recruiting and employing neurodiverse people. Working from home can actually be a really effective reasonable adjustment for neurodiverse people. They don't have to come into your environment. They're in control of their own environment and adjust things to the way they like it. And it can be really, really effective. So don't let that stop you. In terms of the training has just sort of suspended at that point, but we are looking at developing the training now to be national, work remotely, and hopefully 3 to 6 months we'll get that training program online and up and running, and hopefully engaging with lots and lots of people of all sorts of diverse backgrounds. It's really hard for us to get funding. We need more funding. We are going after that. So like Bob Geldof said, give us your money because this program works. So we've learned that this is really hard in some respects. Some people have difficult, complex needs. We need to work on relationships with those people, overcome the anxiety and depression, build confidence, build self-esteem. And really, you've got to engage with individuals. You can't think that one set of reasonable adjustments will fit all. You have to talk to individuals and provide reasonable adjustments that will suit that individual. And quite often, you can roll those out on a broader basis to people who are not neurodiverse. So essential elements, this is the takeaways. You always need experienced support person that goes above and beyond. You need technical experts in the room. We were doing some very technical stuff and we needed top people to come in and talk to us. We also needed our own technical expert who could help with the training and answer those complicated questions. Something that also worked very well for us, we had a quiet room. I spent a lot of time in there. This enabled me to switch off from all those peripheral noises, which not everybody has struggles with. I do. I don't like lots and lots of peripheral noise. And you just need lots of patience, kindness and empathy. And this can really work. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. Hope you've enjoyed it. And I will see you on the panel.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Sorry about the little adjustment there we had to do with YouTube. I would like to say we will be sharing all the videos separately, and they're available now on our YouTube channel. I also saw lots of people had restarted from the stream, so hopefully not too much was missed there. In case you are just joining us, what we'll do now as we enter into our Ask Me Anything panel, it's great to see there's a bunch of questions already in the bank, so we're not going to struggle. There's a vote system on the questions as well, so if you see a question there that you would particularly like asked, it's a democracy. The more votes you have, they're the questions that will come in first. Now we're going to do a quick introduction in case you are just joining us, so you can find out who the people of the panel are. I will start with myself. I'm Crispin. I am director at the Coders Guild. We do training and apprenticeships for technical things at the moment, mostly software development, but we've got cybersecurity and testing and some other stuff in the pipeline. Diversity and inclusion is a big focus for our company. So we have neurodiverse apprentices already. It's working very, very well, and we would like to do more of them, much more. So an invitation for anyone to get in contact who would like to follow that route. And next up, Jen, please.
Hi, my name is Jen Blaco. I am the operations manager at Aspident Training and Consultancy. I work with Dr. Elizabeth Guest, and we deliver expert autism and neurodiversity training to employers, and this includes workplace assessments, understanding autism training, and consultancy. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming here today, and I'm really open to having a chat with anybody after this. In any way I can help, just let me know. Thanks very much.
Tim, please.
Yeah, hello there. I'm Tim Roebuck. I work for NHS Digital and I'm an HR manager. And one of the things I'm really interested in doing is growing and introducing new talent into NHS Digital. I think there's a lot that HR can learn from the digital methods and their inclusive, customer-centric ways of working. And I'm also part of the Ability Network at NHS Digital, and which is one of the many staff networks that we have that are really trying to drive forward a more inclusive and diverse workforce. So thank you.
Amanda?
Thanks, Crispin. Hi, I'm Amanda Wogan. Like Tim, I also work at NHS Digital. For those who don't know, as an organisation, we support and develop tech products for use across the NHS in England. And I am a champion, an advocate and an ally for all disabilities across the board, with a particular interest in neurodiversity. And my work specifically focuses on the person's experience once they're through the door. So it's about ensuring that any adjustments that they need or any barriers that they may face to being an inclusive, fully included member of the team are removed. So that's me.
Thanks, Amanda. AD.
Hello everyone, my name is Adi Stokes. I'm a test engineer at Sonosant, who make software for students, especially those with disabilities, as an accommodation for them to support their learning journeys. I've been working in software development and before that auditing for over 20 years, and I got an interest in accessibility about 6 years ago. And I like to say that accessibility is more about inclusion than just disability, although the disability part is very, very important, obviously. Thank you.
Thanks, AD. Scott.
Thanks, Crispin. I say my name's Scott Kenyon. I said most of it in my talk. I work for a company called ComputerShare. I've been there for over 10 years. I'm a test analyst, and I like to talk and share about my experiences and any sort of examples, and try and help as many people as I can by just being a voice for people.
Thanks very much. Jonathan?
Hello, my name is Jonathan Elwood. I am the Security Operations Centre Manager for the ISME Consortium. IASME Consortium is best known for its partnership arrangement with the National Cybersecurity Centre for the delivery of Cyber Essentials. But my role is to support and develop a team of neurodiverse people to deliver cybersecurity services to SMEs and vulnerable people.
Thanks very much. And last but not least, Yvonne.
Hi, my name's Yvonne Sharrow. I also work at the IASME Consortium. I'm the Employment and Wellbeing Manager. I got involved initially supporting neurodiverse trainees into the cybersecurity industry. I now also follow that up by supporting people in the workplace, similarly to what Amanda was saying, just helping people to overcome barriers, liaising between managers and employees, and just promoting diversity. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks very much. So what a great panel! What a great panel. So I'll jump straight in with the questions. No need for seed questions in this panel. The one with the most votes that we have first off is anonymous. Any tips for how to figure out what support to ask for at work when you don't know it yourself and still learning about yourself and your diagnosis? Brackets ADHD, ASD. Who would like to take that one?
Do you want me to have a go first?
Yes, please.
I best start. Let the gob talk first. So in terms of asking for support and where to go, start small and work your way through it. It seems quite daunting because you also don't know what you can have legally as well as would like. A lot of employees, including my own, are very, very open to just sitting down, having a conversation. As I went through my diagnosis whilst in my employment, so I just sat down with one of the HR reps and my manager at the time and just talked through what accommodations could be made. And some of the accommodations that were made, we actually decided we didn't need them. And some we made, actually, we stuck with. So a lot of the time is just sit down and think of something that would make your situation better. You know, if you are known for having episodes and you need a quiet space, ask for a quiet space, something small, and then work your way up. It can be quite daunting if you ask for everything at once because there's paperwork. So my suggestion would be speak to the HR rep and your manager and start small and build.
Can I add a bit to that?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of you asking, if you don't know it's there, if you don't know an adjustment is available, how do you know to ask for it? And I think at the beginning of the journey, which is where I think the questioner is, some advice that is often really helpful is to not focus your question on what adjustment you need, but how you are experiencing things at work, okay? And ask yourself, how do I feel when I'm in this open room? How do I feel when I'm sitting alone? How do I feel when I'm asked to use task X, Y, to do task X, Y, or Z? And if you go through a set of questions like that, it should trigger some feelings in you that will then lead you to ask for, or will lead to conversations about what was said previously about what sorts of adjustments. So, for example, instead of requesting, a seat at the back of the room with your back to a wall, your feeling is that you feel extremely vulnerable if there are people coming up behind you. Yeah. So one way to do it is to focus on how you're feeling and the impact of that, and bring that into the conversation rather than specifying particular adjustments. It's another way of doing it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think that's actually a really, really good point, isn't it? There's a completely different dynamic in asking for help or asking for a thing, and we feel. I mean, some people feel more or less comfortable with either of those things, but in terms, I would say statistically, when you're asking for help, you are more likely to get a positive response than if you're asking for a thing.
Can I just say that we've had some success with access to work? If you feel, if you want to perhaps approach somebody else, you can apply to access to work, and they'll come in and assess what needs you might might benefit from as well.
Yeah, I was sent to the occupational health therapist as part of the kind of process, and that's similar.
Yeah, I second the access to work point, and occupational health can also help. One of the things that we come across quite a lot in employment with people with autism is actually they've got a diagnosis, but during that process, that hasn't necessarily given them any idea as to how their autism actually affects them, and that can be really confusing. So one of the things that is available, which you could, I can talk to anybody about, is an autism profile. So basically, it's an assessment where we get underneath the underlying issues of the autism, and then are able then to sort of suggest what might help you. It's really hard sometimes when it's yourself. So yeah, just wanted to add that in there.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that
Yeah,
you know, the duty to make adjustments is a duty that is on the employer, and a lot of employers don't know what to do, and that's not their fault, but they can get an expert in who can help and can do something. We have a lot of SMEs, they don't have therapists and things like that, so they need to tap into the resources that are out there through access to work and get an expert in order to explore what can be done for that individual.
And I think the key is to get access to that type of additional expertise. Is following what Scott said, really, to go and talk. If you've got an HR department, go and talk to the HR department, because they'll be very versed with the legal requirements, but they'll also be really interested in supporting you and finding you the advice that you need to make those adjustments into the workplace.
Thanks very much. Some great points there. I'll just jump in straight away to the next question here. If you're diagnosed as anything neurodiverse, should you tell your employer/colleagues? Who'd like to pick that one up first?
Can I kick off with that one, perhaps?
Yes, please do, Tim.
Start the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So, yes, ideally, you should be able to talk to your employer. It's really important. One of the things that I've found that we've struggled with in the past is where people have come forward after experiencing difficulties in the workplace. It's far better to be open and honest with the employer about that. Now, employers are going to vary, aren't they? So some are going to be better than others. I think the thing is, as Jonathan said, there is a legal duty to do something about this, and it's your right to get access to the accommodations that you'll need. So I'd certainly would advise to go and talk to your employer. In relation to talking to other employees, it's always better to be open and honest about things. And I found that most people that I talk to in our type of technical environment, which I know a lot of you are in, are really up for inclusive and really good working relationships, and really value the differences and the different opinions and the different perspectives that people bring. So I would say yes on that one.
Can I add something into that? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
So I fully support what Tim is saying there, and we do have quite a population of folk who the labelling of a particular condition can feel like a stigma. Yeah. So we use something called a workplace passport, workplace adjustment passport. And it's a document that describes what adjustments are needed, and adjustments also, as well as an actual things, environmental things, they're also about team behaviours. Yeah. So it describes, you can capture in this document which team behaviours would be the most supportive. And those team behaviours can be relayed, those team behaviour requirements can be shared with the team in whatever format you choose, but in a way that protects the individual's diagnosis. Because unless you, as the person, want to tell people what your actual diagnosis label is, there's really no need to do that. Yeah, it's great if you can, but if you can't, you are able to simply share the impact of that diagnosis on your needs. So, for example, please don't ever interrupt me in a meeting. You know, my brain, in fact, you don't even need to say anything about how your brain works, but that is one key thing. One key example is please don't interrupt me in meetings, and other various things that you can do.
I think I'll just want to add a very small point onto that about, should you tell your employer? Well, it's very personal to you. It's a very personable thing. And what I did as an experience is I sat down and spoke to my employer privately, and I spoke to my manager privately, and I spoke to the individuals that were around me, the closest first. And I found it difficult to try and explain it 8-9 times. So that's why I came up with a cheat sheet. So an A4 bit of paper with, I have autism. Here's a link to the autism website. If you want to read it, please do. And I was really lucky because the people, my colleagues, actually read it and understood, okay, well, these are the traits, the normal traits of autism. I can see that. So this is how I can better manage my communication with Scott. So I think it's very personable. And the way I did it was, start with the people close to me and work out, but have a cheat sheet, because it's difficult explaining yourself 1,000 times. So, especially remotely.
Yeah, I'll just add to that it was very useful was Scott's cheat sheet. He said some days I'll be in this sort of mood or that sort of mood, and it just, rather than going, oh, he's grumpy today, you sort of give you an appreciation that he might be having a tough day or whatever it might be. So I personally found it really, really useful. But I also respect the fact that not everybody will want to.
Great. Before we move on, does anyone else have anything to add? Okay, grand. So our next question for the panel is how to get across to neurotypical employers the difference between nice to have and reasonable adjustment.
Yes.
Dignity at Work Act. I think it's difficult because everything I thought that I needed, I thought it was just for me. It was a nice thing to have. It really came down to actually speaking with the right HR rep, speaking with the right person who I could have honest discussions with the rep. That was it, really.
Amanda, did you want to pick up?
I think to find the right reasonable adjustment, finding the right reasonable adjustment for somebody, you've got to try lots of different things and see what works for that person, because something that works one year you might find the following year doesn't work anymore, and you've got to change it and do something else. So in terms of having nice to have and what's a reasonable adjustment, I don't think you should try and put anything into those two buckets. I think you just try lots of different things, find out what works, what doesn't work, and just engage with that individual.
So I think for neurotypical employers, one good way to approach this, and the word reasonable is littered throughout law. It's in legislation, everywhere you look, and it's one of the biggest, I think, money generators for courts and stuff, because it's so open to interpretation, and this example is absolutely no different. So in terms of approaching a conversation about whether an adjustment is reasonable or framed as a nice to have, one way is to explain how it helps you do your job better, or how it would help you do your job better. Because then, of course, you are adding more, you're bringing more value into the business because you're able to perform at your best. Yeah? And then if there's still kind of no shifting around, there's some conversations there about equality. Yeah. And that's where I would suggest that anyone who has not who's feeling in the slightest bit anxious has an ally or an advocate with them in that conversation, because it's very easy to talk on behalf of someone, and it's a very different matter to talk about yourself on your own. Really, really hard. It's one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we get is you cannot be your own advocate. Yeah. So if you can, always have somebody else there, and have that kind of two-stage conversation.
Great, thanks. The next question I've got up here, do you have any advice for supporting women in the workplace who are autistic, who may have different autistic traits, such as social masking and shyness?
Could I go on, Jonathan?
So I do have a few girls in my team, which is fantastic. And in terms of making adjustments for those people, you have to try and take on their perspective. You know, so for example, if it's shyness, you don't press them to go to meetings or use a camera, for example, in a video chat, or you make things optional and allow them to do things on their terms, and you will find that just allowing them to join a meeting but without the camera on, and maybe on silent, that the next time they join a meeting, maybe put the microphone on, and the meeting after that, maybe they say something as well. So it's about building confidence and making them feel at ease in that environment.
Can I just jump in? I think it sort of comes back to that everybody's got their own individual needs, and we're starting to recognise over recent years that women and girls have been underdiagnosed with autism, and it's just about recognising that if they have got a diagnosis of autism, finding out how that impacts on them, because as you suggested, it might be a bit different. Generally, I don't like to generalise, but women will be masking more, and so you might need to dig a little bit deeper beyond that to find out what's really going on and how you can help. And it just comes back to that open dialogue and continued communication, I think.
So
you don't want anybody to be masking anywhere, do you? Really?
No, it's too
if somebody's
tiring.
having, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Amanda, did you want to pick up at the end there?
I think it was captured mostly by the previous speaker. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name.
Yvonne.
Sorry, what is your name?
Yvonne.
Yvonne, thank you. Mostly covered off by Yvonne. And just going back to the point about gender-based difference, there may well be some gender-based difference, but within the different gender populations, there will be difference. So it always comes back to that individual perspective and what is right or wrong for that person, agnostic of their gender. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, just quickly, just to back that as well. It's every autistic person is an individual, they're completely different. So it just goes back to irrespective of gender or creed, it's how does this affect this individual, and getting underneath the symptoms to what's actually going on. So yeah, same applies really.
Great, thanks everyone. So here's a good question. How do you tackle the challenge of employers and colleagues not understanding neurodiversity on the job, aside from seminars like this?
We have a kind of a way of presenting it in that autism there's no autistic trait that you don't find in the general population. Everybody has one or two quirks that are more extreme than their peer, and if you put it like that and then help people to understand that being autistic usually means that you have more of those traits to more of an extreme, and that helps people to understand, not non-autistic people to kind of understand, okay, so yeah, I get that, I have hypersensitivity to noise as well, and so I can relate to that. So yeah, imagine if I also had hypersensitivity to noise and movement, and at the same time, I found it difficult to process information, and then people start to kind of understand it from where they're sat, and that's how we try and go about it. That, and also putting people in sensory overload in under 3 minutes, which is one of the favourite parts of our exercise. But it's it's about reducing demystifying it and helping people that aren't autistic to understand it in relation to their experience of the world. That autistic people aren't these aliens that are different than everyone else. We're all human. We all have, and autistic people just have more extreme traits, more of an extreme, which makes their experience of the world more, different to an extreme of what is normal.
I mean, for myself, I think I'd be lying if I said everyone I've ever worked with or known was, really open to neurodiversity and understood it all. One of the ways I'd say I got around the tackle and how I tackled the challenge of getting past that with people is either one-on-one trying to talk to them, or I just say I create my cheat sheet for them to actually get an understanding. And I think a lot of colleagues and employers want to understand more. They want to do as much as they can to be inclusive, but it's sometimes difficult for them to know where to look because there's so much information out there. You almost get swamped. So what I did on my traits and some of the quirks I had was actually look at certain sections of the autism website, certain sections of Mind, and then send them as links. And because the people then understood more, then the challenge was halved. And then obviously any issues we could talk about. But yeah, for me, it's just being more direct. It's all personal to you. My cheat sheet's perfect for me, not someone else. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think what everyone's saying. There's. I mean, this is not even to do with autism or with neurodiversity specifically. Most of our human traits and anything that we can describe or group or anything, we have them all. We are just to lesser or more degrees, like OCD. We all leave the house and have I left the gas on, or have I where's my keys? And it's just the multiplication or the exemplification of those traits. So I think there's definitely like an awareness campaign that I feel is gathering momentum, especially I feel like over the past few years it's become more talked about and more and there is more awareness. And I think it's with all these things it's everybody's responsibility to add to the add weight to the momentum to the movement. It's the more that we talk about things, the more that we make people aware of this, the better. It's not one person's job. One person can't do it all. It has to be us all. Awesome. Right. I'm going to try and rattle through. We've got so many questions. We might have to do some sort of follow up or something. Maybe we could do some text responses or something. We'll try and follow up with some of this. We've got so many questions. Next one. Do you have any advice? Oh no, hold on. I've done that one. Great to hear from Testing Scott. What are some simple ways to be inclusive with neurodiverse people in the workplace? So from the neurotypical angle, I'm thinking more.
I'll tell you what ways people have changed the way they work with me to make it better for me in the long run, especially working remotely. And when we first started working remotely, it was a lot of watching PowerPoints and multiple people moving stuff around on the screen. That sent me into a slight episode. I had to turn the screen off. It's not something I'd experienced before. So the simple ways we do it now is we don't have lots of moving parts on screens when we're watching it, when we're all trying to collaborate. We'll do it in sections. So that's the way it's a little bit more inclusive for us as my team, is to say, well, this doesn't work as a line of communication with Scott, so let's try something else. So that's something our team accommodated for me. And a lot of other things we accommodate is if we go into a big meeting, like a 60, 70 people, like a town hall, I'll be allowed to sit down first. So I'm comfortable where I am. So I'm not looking at doors and all the exits are, stuff like that. So they're very simple ways that my team has supported me and also my work to make it more inclusive for me. So I'm not, on edge or whatever.
So I've got some practical experiences that I've had. I don't have autism, but I have a reasonable amount of experience now of supporting people with autism to do stuff. So I mentioned something earlier for a different question about not interrupting, and that's it. That sounds like good behaviour, but people's enthusiasm often gets the better of them, and it can be very daunting. From what I've learned over time, it can be very daunting for people with autism to be constantly interrupted. Practical things also include things like train travel. So for autistic colleagues, when we make a train booking, we book 2 seats so they have an empty seat next to them. Yes, we book people into the quiet coach as well. If there's an overnight stay in London, we make sure that there is space in the itinerary for that person to go to their own room and be quiet for X period of time. And this is all derived from conversations with those specific individuals. And as we touched on earlier, it varies by person. And then picking up on what was said before just now, even something like a restaurant booking. So for one particular member of staff, we always requested that we had a table with a wall behind one side of the table so that the person could sit on the other side and not have to look at the rest of the restaurant, because it just confused, it caused negative feelings in her. So if she could focus just on the people she knew, she found it much easier to deal with. And from my conversations with this individual, because I was personally involved in this, I learned so much, because I had absolutely no idea as a neurotypical person just how many factors can affect an atypical kind of brain. Absolutely astonishing. So I would encourage anyone in that type of role to just talk to people, talk, explore, find out, get that trust there and find out, because it's only by sharing that you'll understand how best to support people.
Can I just, sorry, I've interrupted. No, it's just listening to everybody, even though this is my job and I think that, I'm hoping that I'm getting it right, it's making me think, actually, I need to go back and listen to people a bit more. It's about, keeping that communication open. Don't just think, oh, I've got an employee with a neurodiversity, this is what I need to do. Everyone's an individual, and I include neurotypical people in that as well. How do we get the best out of our staff? Talk to them, find out what's stopping them from, what. I mean, obviously, it comes back to reasonable. We can't go, oh, you need a beer fridge, and all of that. But what do you need in order to do your job properly?
Yeah, I agree. And one other point is just recruitment. Please, if you can, think about how you can make your recruitment processes more welcoming. We're not-for-profit organisations, so part of what we do is work with long-term unemployed autistic adults, many of whom have qualifications, have skills, very talented, very loyal, very intelligent individuals. But the thing that stops them from even getting a chance of showing what they're able to do in the workplace is getting through that recruitment process. You wouldn't award somebody a degree from conducting an interview with them for an hour, asking them about what they can do. You'd get them to do the work, you'd get them to show you what they can do. And I know it's maybe not as cost effective rather than doing assessment centres and days of interviews, but if you can, maybe have a think about how you can change your way of recruiting people, perhaps work trials, or getting people doing something that they'll have to do as part of their role. And then with that, you will get to know the individual much better than you would in an interview, when they might be extremely unlikely to pass it just because of the way they come across.
Yeah, 100% agree. One of the things that's really interesting for me about trying to make our processes and our systems work better for neurodiverse people is the benefits of those that rolls on to making everything better for everybody. You know, having thinking about it to open lines of communication with how do you want to talk to me, rather than this is what you do to talk to me. You know, that there's such a distinct difference that I think that is often lacking. You know, fill out this form, or, you know, initiate this meeting. You know, to just have everything open of like, you can, however you would like to apply for this job, however you would like to initiate a conversation with me, we'll do what you want to do. I think that's a big step towards inclusivity there.
I mean, in terms of interviews, I hate them. I hate every bit of them, because the structure of an hour and the competency-based questions just don't sit with me. And I found it very difficult. Even when applying for internal roles in my business, I got home, got changed, put a full suit on, had a little book and everything ready to go. Because that's how I see an interview has to be. It's very straight and very logic. I was quite lucky going for my recent role where the interview was split. It was split up. It wasn't one big hour session. It was split, and I was lucky because Adi then obviously, as Jensen, gave me challenges to do, and just watched how I approached those challenges. Rather than ask me a competency-based question about teamwork, it was more about how I approached a challenge, and that's what very briefly showed my skill, rather than just words coming out of my mouth. And that was a really good thing, that, you know, the small change that was made, the outcome was still the same.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Can I just come in there, Crispin? Because
yes, please do.
Quite a few questions as well about interviews themselves.
Yeah.
And it's interesting from an HR manager's point of view. The interview, or a traditional interview where we give people a battery of competency-based questions, expect them to make eye contact with us, have immediate cognition, and be able to pull out all these model answers, is actually one of the least reliable methods of recruitment. It doesn't guarantee, or it doesn't give you that much assurance that the person can actually do the job. And I really worry sometimes when we talk about interviews, when I'm talking to people that are about to interview, saying, well, actually, what you need this person to do is software development or cybersecurity. You don't need them, as far as I know, to be a professional interviewee and be able to do all that kind of crazy stuff. So why do we bother doing it at all? And I think the other thing that I was reflecting on before joining today was that if you look at neurodiversity from the law and what the law says, and you work that up into the people might be familiar with the disability 2 ticks system. So we've got that as an employer, and it says that, you know, if you're disabled and you apply for this job, as long as you meet the minimum criteria, we guarantee you an interview. And I'm just looking at it now thinking, that's the worst possible thing that we could do with people with neuro needs. And so I think from an interview point of view, don't think about interview, think about how are you going to select somebody for a job. Think very carefully about what you actually need them to do. Not all the other peripheral stuff that goes around it, where we start to make things up and fill the gaps in terms of, like eye contact, nice firm handshake, all that sort of stuff. It's irrelevant to the job. So what we've done, so I've done a bit of recruitment with trainees and graduates, is not make any assumptions really about what they need, but start that dialogue with them early. Now, I've started from the position of knowing that they have a neuro need, which is why, you know, it's important to be honest about that. And then just worked from there to say, right, with the manager, maybe separate conversations with the manager and individuals to start off with. How are we going to establish whether they can do this job, manager? And to the individual, what is it you need to be able to demonstrate what you can do? And then taking that approach that, you know, there's no point in putting a label on things and saying, oh, they got ADHD, they've got Asperger's, therefore the sticking plaster is this. It's about that dialogue. And what we found is that when we do that, we get the best out, they can show themselves the best they can be. And we just get some amazing, talented candidates as well. So I think, in a way, what I'd like employers, if there are any employers listening, is that the interview itself is a bit of a myth. It might say it in your recruitment processes, it might say it on your 2 ticks, but to take the words of digital, think about the outcomes that you're actually wanting, not all these different inputs and outputs in process. So I guess that's my thought really on this for today.
And can I just supplement that a little bit? If that's a message for employers, which is, I hope what we're living and breathing now. But there's also something about individuals with neurodiversity when you are applying for a job, is that I think this often gets lost or doesn't quite connect, but that if you're invited to an interview, asking for a different style of interview because of your neurodiversity is of itself a reasonable adjustment request. Yeah. And the employer should, any decent employer is going to listen to you. Yeah. So I just thought I'd flag that, because I think it gets, you know, we often overlook the recruitment piece, and I'm so glad that someone brought it up. We focus a lot on the experience when the person is in, but actually sometimes getting through the door can be the hardest bit. Yeah, so that is something worth remembering for anyone who's looking to move on for whatever reason, find a new job.
Could I just make a comment on this?
Of course, yeah.
So I think for all business processes and procedures, for neurodiverse people, it's important to be explicit about what's going to happen, because they can't tell you the reasonable adjustment of what it is. So if you're explicit about what's going to happen in detail, give them thinking time and processing time, and then they can perhaps give some guidance on adjustments that they might need for your process.
Absolutely, and I think if an employer is adopting the interview, the dreaded interview model, and you know, having the type of conversation that I was referring to previously feels like a step too far, an adjustment within the boundaries of that traditional interview model is to ask for the questions in advance as a reasonable adjustment, because I've personally seen that help so many people with neurodiverse conditions. Yeah, so that the strictures that an interview environment and the pressure that induces is to a degree written off before you start, and it helps everybody. It helps the panel as well.
I've had a couple of interviews from a personal experience. One where I didn't tell them I had neurodiverse skills until halfway through, and then one of the people interviewing me changed their attitude towards me because of what I'd said, which was disheartening. And I've had some of my best interviews I've had is, as Amanda said, ask for, you know, what is it you want me to bring? What is it you want me to you know, bring to the party, as it were? You know, and then I actually had lots of notes. So each bit of paper was a paper about teamwork. So then I knew full well that I could focus on it. And one thing was good for me as an interviewee was to tell my interviewer, okay, I have brought these notes. This is what I have. If you ask me a question, I may spend 20 seconds getting this bit of paper out, and then I'll be able to articulate it accurately. But that was me trying to shoehorn myself into the formal interview process, which was very difficult, but it supported me a lot more than ruffle through papers. Open and honest at the start with interviewer, I find a lot better, and have my papers spread out. I kind of just took over the desk. Helped me massively.
And employers may ask, well, how can we make reasonable adjustments at interview for a neurodiverse individual if they haven't disclosed it beforehand, which some people may not feel comfortable doing. So it's kind of hard to do that, and that's understandable. So maybe one of the things, if you really are committed to just being more understanding and taking each individual as an individual, then perhaps some sort of message throughout your recruitment application process which says, do you have, you might do it anyway, but do you have any neurodiverse difficulties, and then just give people that option then. Sometimes I think that's forgotten about as well.
I completely agree, and I would also suggest that never ask the question once. Always ask it more than once through the journey. So as Jen has said, put it in your advertisement, your commitment to disability, neurodiversity. Have it in your recruitment pathway materials. Ask the question at different stages, and possibly the most important stage, because it can actually tip a situation for a candidate who has yet to disclose, is when the candidate sits down and you are in the preamble as the panel. Ask as a last minute question, are there any adjustments, or is there anything you'd like the panel to be aware of, so that we can provide the appropriate support to get the best out of you? Yeah. So ask it a number of times, evidence it, and make sure you ask it at the very final gateway, would be my advice to employers.
That's great. That's great advice. Thanks, Amanda. We are actually, we're out of time, but if anyone would like to stay on, we could do an extra couple of questions. Is there I'm getting some nods, so we'll go ahead. There's a couple of the ones that have got the most votes up here. If you're diagnosed with ADHD after you've been at your job for a few years, what if people just think that you're normal? How do you convince them it's real?
I was in my job for 5 years, then I got diagnosed. Some of the people I'd worked with for those 5 years were like, yeah, we get it. We had the idea about it anyway. It's fine. Some people weren't. I stopped trying to convince people it was normal. The people who weren't really engaging about it or were dismissive about it, I decided it was best to focus my efforts on other things. There is still going to be people out there. You can't win everybody. So
I think that's really true. And I think, I would add that a lot of these things are hidden difficulties, and people go to a lot of trouble to cover up the difficulties they're having. So there's a conversation to have there as well.
I don't think you have to be neurodiverse to do that either. I think a lot of people perhaps may do that in the workplace, and you can only, by having an environment and a kind environment where it's okay to come to it and say, actually, I'm having a bad day today, because everybody has mental health in some way or other, and I think neurodiversity.
Grand. And one more question I've got here that I think is a super important one. How do we find those people off grid that are neurodiverse but wanting to work? I think Jen, you're probably quite equipped to pick this up straight away, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, this is the difficulty sometimes we have, because often employers come to us and say, or we're talking about neurodiversity in employment and the benefits of employing autistic and neurodiverse people, and employers think it's a really, really good idea, and then they say, so where are all these autistic people that we want to employ? And there's a bit of an issue, is that a lot of autistic people who have who would be able to work and would be amazing employees have unfortunately been let down by the education system. They've not been understood growing up, so they're in a position now where they may be long-term unemployed, and that means that I mean, we're working with an individual at the moment who's 30 years old. She'd be an amazing employee for somebody, but because she's been left behind in terms of development and because of being misunderstood, we're actually at a stage now where we're trying to give her those fundamental skills that you need to get into work. And there's a lot of people out there like that have unfortunately, there's a lot of work to do with them before they're ready for work, and that's what we're doing. There are a lot of people that are already in employment, so in terms of the question, how do you access these people? I think the first thing to do is approach, say, an organisation like ourselves and tell us what you want, what skills do you need, what job have you got, and what skills does it require, and then let us see if we can tap into our networks and people that we know that will fit that, and then we know what development work we need to do to get them into that position. And that would be my advice at the moment. It's not a case of you can change your recruitment processes so they're more appealing to people with autism and neurodiversity to get more people applying, but it's a bit more complex than sort of just saying I want to employ 10 autistic people and then getting them in to do a role in your company. It's got to be a right fit. It's got to be done real properly. But honestly, if you do it, you won't regret it.
The key message here, I think, is collaboration. You know, you don't have to do your own outreach. There are loads of people, like ourselves included, and Aspident, and there are loads of people who are already they've done that bit. Now we're looking for employers for these people that we have, and that's the bit that's missing. So how you find them is find the people who've already found them. It would be my advice. Has anyone else got something to add?
I think myself was, look at your community. And I'm a tester, so I've got obviously a testing community, and test community is very neurodiverse in itself. And I found that actually it's far easier understanding, I'm looking at opportunities, and your testing community, who probably know you a lot bit more, can actually give you some direct points. We're quite lucky. We have some recruiters who come to some of our events and they actually just speak to us, and they're the first people we would probably approach. Community meetups sort of thing.
And can I just chip in as well? So one possibly quite unlikely sounding avenue is actually the job centre. Yeah, because it's we all know what the job centre, we all know its function. And I remember Tim and I had a colleague who told a wonderful story, and it's not about neurodiversity, but the model was very sound, where she described when she needed some NHS porters out in a hospital, and she went to the job centre and she set up in the corner, obviously with their permission, just with some information about the organisation and the types of skills they were looking for, and managed to fill those posts, and they were hard to fill posts. And people, I can envision people such as Jen has described there, signing on, or having to visit the job centre for mandatory appointments, and there's an opportunity there to triage a percentage of those people over to the table and say, well, why don't you go and have a chat over there and have a completely different kind of conversation. And without, I hope I don't sound trite, but actually that kind of thing can change somebody's life. Something that simple.
Yeah, the amount of very, very capable autistic people that we've worked with that have gone round and round the job centre work programmes, and because they're not they're not good at interviews, or that there's something that they struggle with, or the employers don't understand their autism. They're just never selected, but they are there, they are out there, and there's lots and lots of organisations that work with them. So I guess, yeah, like Crispin said, reaching out to those that are already there, and going to the places where they might be, like job centres.
I wonder, Yvonne, Jonathan, do you have anything particular practical, I guess, to add from your experience of setting up the SOC?
Oh, sorry, Jonathan, have I interrupted you?
No, I thought you'd probably best answer that, because you were
Yeah.
doing it before I was involved with it. I was just one of the first
Yeah,
guinea pigs.
so listening to what everybody said, when we were doing the training, when we started off with the training, before we even got as far as setting up the SOC or reaching out to employers, we did have links with the job centres. It was where we were going to find these people that we needed to reach, and it involved building relationships, having conversations. I went and gave a talk at one of the job centre training days, one of my local job centre training days, because there was a willingness to get people into work, and unfortunately some people were being put into seemingly easy jobs, warehouse jobs, etc., but it was hopeless, and they were just facing failure after failure. So yeah, the job centres, once they understood what we were doing, and they could start to spot the people that they needed to push into our direction, it was a really good resource.
My route in was really through the adult autism diagnostic team within the NHS in Cheltenham, and so I went through an educational program with them, which sort of teaches you about yourself and what reasonable adjustments are, and what might work and what might not work in the workplace or the education system. And most of the people in my group were technical, and most of them at work as well. So there's a group of people that are sat there within the NHS system, even that could be a pathway into these technical roles.
Great. I think this would be our final question. The last one. Can I just ask, would you or employers consider bipolar? Sorry, this is going to be difficult for me to pronounce this word. I don't know. Cyclothymia as neurodiverse. It seems mostly applied to ADHD, ASD, PTSD, in my experience.
From my experience, yes. And I looked at that question. I was just waiting for you to try and read that, Crispin. So thank you. Yes. As an employee, if someone has a bipolar or any sort of mental health, anything at all, I would say, yeah, that's something to consider personally. And I think looking at what my employer does and supports, I think they would as well. I can't speak for them, but it's in line with what I believe. So,
and from a employment law perspective as well, if somebody has a condition, regardless of what it is, it's a mental health condition or classed as neurodiversity, if it's been with them for 12 months or longer, then it's the same applies in terms of reasonable adjustments and inclusivity and that sort of thing.
And I would just chip in there and say that the label itself is far less important than the need for adjustments. Yeah, so whether you have one label, 20 labels, or no labels, if you feel you need an adjustment to be your best self at work, then you have a route to ask for it. Or you should.
yeah, as a quick shoot off on that, I found it not difficult, but not as easy as it would have been without a label from the NHS to get the right support. So one of the first things I had to try and tranche through was the NHS to get the label that was required. So, sometimes difficult and a long path, but, just got to look at the end of it.
Yeah, and imagine if we could change things so that nobody needs a label. Everybody tries to understand each other, because that's all it is. That's all it is with neurodiversity. And it works both ways. It's hard enough. It's hard for non-autistic people to understand autistic people, but we also recognise that it's really hard for non-autistic people to understand autistic people. And so we've got to work together and for the greater good.
Thanks very much. I think that's a really good point to end on. I think that I think we can all agree that what our main takeouts here is it's all about communication and collaboration. That's the way that we bring this project forward, and we gather momentum. I would like to say before we disappear, what we will do for the other questions that are left, I might ping them round on an email, and we'll see if we can get some little answers to go out on blogs or social. We will be sharing all the stuff, resharing stuff from the panel, and contact details. If you wanted to get in touch with any of the panel, you can. I'm not going to just dish out everyone's contact details, don't worry, but you can DM me on Twitter or LinkedIn and I will pass that connection through. You can also sign up. If you sign up to our mailing list on our site, codersguild.org, we'll be able to push stuff out to you that way as well. So last, I can see the battery on my camera flashing. Yeah. So just time to say a big thank you to Jen, to Scott, to Amanda, to Jonathan, to Yvonne, to Tim, and to Adi, and also to Reese Media for running the stream and making it so that I don't have to press too many buttons as I'm going on. I'm so chuffed that we had some great questions and great answers. I'm really, really pleased. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crispin.
My pleasure.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.